You are going to see riots and blood in the streets tomorrow.
For centuries.
Stop taking on extra debt.
Yes.
Love it.
Not quite.
He's gonna. He's going right.
Grown man, hey, you want some candy? It's crashing. A straight up panic on our hands.
All right, Travis, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. You run a massive YouTube channel in the finance space called The Economic Ninja.
Yeah, but not as massive as this channel is going to be. I have a feeling.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Grow together.
I'm a
Grow
ninja.
together.
We've been doing this for a year. We're still not getting any views. It's okay.
You know what? It looks like you're having a lot of fun, though.
We're having so much fun. Yeah, it's a cool
awesome.
way to meet super cool people like yourself. So
Thank you.
yeah,
You're
man.
awesome.
For anyone who doesn't know what you do, can you explain it?
I'm actually the jack of all trades, master of none. I'm a full-time firefighter, about to leave, been in the service for 25 years, had a ton of side hustles, became a credit investor when I was 26, and knew about some crazy stuff that was coming in the future as far as cycles. I got out before the dot-com bust. I kept a couple core positions, lost my butt on those, but by and large saved myself. I knew about the housing crisis and sold all of my real estate. Actually, I sold about 85% of my portfolio in 2006. And then I knew about what was coming in the 2015 to 2018 debt market crisis, which most people don't even know happened, which actually led us to COVID. And I knew about that too. As a matter of fact, I even had a list of all the dates and the variant stuff, which I don't know if we can even talk about that, but
No, we'll get into all of that.
All right.
Yeah, so take us back. When did you get started interested in making your finance channel?
So the finance channel was, I'm really young. I'm only 3 years old. So all the stuff that I knew about and the things I was investing in, I would warn friends and family. They'd all mock me, especially after 2006. I looked like a crazy person. So lost all my friends. Nobody wanted to hang out with me. Kept 2 friends out of all of that. I know too much and I've got to start sharing this. And it's not stuff that I know. It was crazy information on, Discord channels or dark web stuff where you'd start learning about all this stuff or reading about, agendas like 2016, 2021. And you can't read about those now, but you could read about the new one that nobody believes. And, I remember warning people about that a long time ago. Hey, they're going to do this to us. They're going to use a crisis for a new digital currency. Oh, they're going to do this. Well, now they're saying by 2030, you're going to own nothing and like it. And that's not a joke. And so that's when I started the channel. And I started it, not to be somber, but it was, there's an economic collapse coming on the size of the scale of the Great Depression. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to take their lives. And I don't want to see that happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to warn you about it. I'm going to show you how to make a lot of money from it. And then we're going to save some people's lives. And it wasn't until, it was amazing. Within 3 months, the channel monetized. And I had somebody call me or email me, and we were able to prove that this was true. They said they went one night, they were going to end their life. Saw the videos, got addicted to the channel. I don't know why. And 6 months later has $10,000 in the bank and his life's completely different. Doesn't want to end his life. And now he just wants to become a multimillionaire. And so that was when I realized that my life was going to change. I can't say forever because we all know cycles, but it's been an amazing ride.
Okay, so let's go back in time. Like, where were you born? What were your parents like? What led you to be a firefighter? Tell me about the the early days.
I grew up in Southern California. I'm glad I'm not there anymore because it's gotten a lot rougher. It was rough growing up. My mom was an amazing cheerleader. Oh, you want a taste? Amazing cheerleader.
He's gonna.
He's going right for the face.
He's gonna bug you the whole episode. I'm sorry.
No worries. We like him in the video. It was like
love. Okay, so anyway, my mom was an amazing cheerleader. My dad was rough, but he loved us. But he grew up with a father that was a very wealthy person. Actually, he owned most of the city of Chino. When he passed away, and owned the hardware store there.
So is it your grandpa that taught you the kind of financial savings and
No, actually, my dad, all my dad taught me was the law of sowing and reaping. When you help people, when you sow money, it'll come back, right? Multiple times over. And he was really big on not being in debt. My father. And my father didn't have a lot of help growing up himself, so I didn't. And I saw the difference between my siblings that got, my younger brothers that got help from my parents and how they grew up, as opposed to me, night and day. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. But my mother and my grandmother, my Nana, were incredible cheerleaders. I remember, and they said you could do anything you set your mind to. And I remember my Nana knew I loved Ferraris. I just was, I had all the posters. I love Ferraris. And she bought me a model. And she said one day, and it was an expensive Tester's big model. And she said, someday you're going to drive up and you're going to take me for a ride in the real one. And when around 25 and 26, I didn't start wanting to become wealthy until I had my children. That's when everything changes. You know, when you have children, it's like, whoa, like I've got a lot of mouths to feed, but I also want to give them everything I didn't have, but sensibly, right? So that they're smart with their money.
You feel like that need to show off disappeared because now all of a sudden you have kids that
no,
depend on you.
And we could talk about that because that desire for a Ferrari overtook me. Because when I was 26, I saved up to pay cash for one, a 355, a Ferrari 355, 1996. And instead of paying cash for it, because I was flipping homes at that time, my son was one, I couldn't pull myself to do it. So I took the money and I bought an F-350 truck and I bought a replica from a movie. You know, because I was all about the looks back then. That's what I cared about. I love the car, but I was all about the looks and showing them off, right?
Yeah.
But really, I needed to learn and go through a metamorphosis that took 25, 30 years to go through, to where I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I care about how I look in the mirror. And honestly, when I look at myself, I still don't like what I see. So I'm constantly trying to change things. Well, going back to the Ferrari, the day that I bought the replica, to me, it was still as good. It was the win, right? I saved up. I could have bought the one cash, but I bought an F-350 truck, a used one, salvage title for the construction company, the flipping company. The night that I bought it, my grandmother went to take a nap and never woke up. And she was in an RV park right outside of Vegas. It was an hour or two after I bought the car. And I told my wife, I said, I have to go pick the car up in Vegas. I'm taking my grandmother for the first ride. I got a call that night when I was celebrating with my best friend. We were going to go pick up this car, that my grandmother had passed away.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, so we pull up with this car on the trailer, and it was her ashes that I'm seeing.
Jeez,
you know?
yeah.
And so that taught me to live in the moment. I was still super tight with my money and saving because, you know, you've talked about it before. I know your friends, your other channels talk about the importance of not going too big, like save, build your nest egg, and then go out and experience risk. So it took me a long time, but I really realized after a while, it wasn't until I gave up that desire to look impressive in front of people that things really started to blow up for me. That was it, like really letting that go and truly caring about somebody else. Even though I wanted to be important and try and help people, you got to look at the motives, and my motives weren't right.
What happened to the Ferrari? Did you eventually sell it, or?
Yeah, we sold. It was a massive paperweight, and everywhere I went, like it would draw a crowd. I'm like, it's not real. It's nothing real, you know. But we did sell it, and you know, it's funny. I took that money, and I still had the money for that Ferrari in my bank ever since I didn't buy it. And just a couple, 6 months ago, I took advantage of this crash, which not a lot of people understand what's going on. And I bought one of my dream cars, and I bought it for, it's like 30% under value.
What'd you get?
I bought a 991, Porsche 991 Porsche.
Cool. Yep.
And non-turbo, anything like that, nothing crazy. But the dealer is so strapped there, he's losing his dealership. And so because he sells commercial trucks and nobody's buying because this thing's already well underway, this crash. Yeah. And so I bought his daily driver from him for pennies on what he paid for it from Porsche Palm Springs.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. And so I'm lining up to buy a big collection this next year and the year after as everything comes crashing down. I want to do it on my channel to show people what happens when you're patient and you put out the effort, like the Ford GT.
So just jumping back, what was the very first investment you made and the thesis behind it, and how did it work out? Like going all the way back.
And that's hard because I've had so many side hustles. I've always looked at everything I flip as an investment. So starting at candy sales in 2006, when I was in 6th grade, 2006. Grown man, hey, you want some candy?
The candy sales.
Yeah, exactly. Candy sales are crushing it. You can tell. Look at me. No, but my point
it
being
was a side hustle mentality.
Side hustle,
for a long
yeah.
time.
It was always because I bought my first house selling electric trains, and and then after that, like within 3 months, I had my first rental, and then I was buying a house every 8 weeks from 2001 to like 2003.
How were you able to buy a house every?
So that's what's really exciting.
Talk about electric
that's
trains
what's exciting.
Too,
what most people don't realize. Yeah. So, I know we're jumping everywhere. Sorry, but the electric train story is again something I really wanted that was very expensive.
Did you become like an expert in reselling them? Kind of like you became like a collector. And
I was like one of the first
this
eBay power sellers.
Undervalued, and I'm going to resell it.
Yeah, so what happened was there's these trains from Germany called LGB, and they're always in FAO Schwartz and stuff. And growing up as a kid, we didn't have any money, and I always wanted this train. And I just, when I got married, we went to a toy store, and they're normally $400 for just a train, 2 cars, and a circle of track. That was a lot of money back in 99 or 2000, and they had them 50% off, $200. I'm like, oh my gosh, and my wife's like, you deserve it, go do it. And that was a lot of money for me, and so I bought it. And a couple days later, I'm like, I'm gonna sell it. And I sold it for $400. And then I ran back down to the store and I bought 2 more sets. Then I sold those. Then I ran back door and I cleaned them out. Within a year, I had $20,000 in my bank account and a room full of trains that I've never played with in my life. Just by the way, I've never touched them. I just think they're really cool looking. I bought my first house. Well, if you buy houses in a certain way during a Fed a loosening cycle, you can buy a lot of homes real easy. And what happens is as you're refinancing them and you're buying them at a proper cap rate, you're refinancing, pulling cash out, and that money's going to the next house. So it was just me and my wife, and we had, like, our record was 6 escrows at once. And by the way, I mean, I know you guys hang out with a lot of really cool people in the space that are moving a lot of money. They got a lot of money in debt, hundreds of millions of dollars. And they're about to see something really interesting happen in the next year. But when you're by yourself doing that, I didn't have anyone that had 50 doors, 100 doors. So for me, I had like 14 doors at once. That was a lot. I didn't know anyone in the space. So if you had to ask me what my first big investment was, it was houses. That was the biggest one.
You were leveraging.
Yeah, I was leveraging totally. And, but I was leveraging on the way down, and I was one of the rare people that actually had 6 months of payments of every mortgage I had. So if I had 6 mortgages at once, I had 6 months of 6 mortgages in the bank.
How were you making all the money? From just selling the houses, or?
Yeah, so I had flip homes in California, and then I had longer term cash flow portfolios in Arizona and in New Mexico, because the renter laws were, they're definitely in our favor. And only had 1 midnight move out, and I had 1 eviction, and the person I had evicted was full-time, paying perfectly, but was dealing drugs. And so it was actually a great thing, because I got to talk to people and I said, look, love how you pay, don't appreciate what you do, you got to go. And they totally understood. And they had to break one little window to get into the house to leave something. I'm like, that's the least of my problems, So that's what was really neat about having portfolios separate by state, and then by, what I'm doing with the real estate flipping.
How did you know to exit out of your real estate portfolio before?
And this is the scariest thing, because it's so obvious, but it's not to most people. When monetary tightening happens, and that's done a couple different ways. But the easiest way is the Federal Reserve raises rates, which makes it harder to borrow. It eventually gets it tips over to where nobody has money. It was so easy to see that in 2004 when they started raising, and they had a dot plot plan, and they always tell you ahead of time when they're going to do it. And they stair-stepped it every other quarter. I sold at the first, because I knew they were going to run rates up to X amount. I sold in the first lower third of that rate hiking cycle, because I knew that I call it the dumb money, the people that run in fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If I don't buy a house right now, I'm never going to be able to do it, because the guy that's making a commission off my sale said that. Velocity slows down, comes to a grinding halt. It's too late then. And the crash actually happened in mid 2005. Most people don't understand that, because Ben Bernanke addressed the nation and said, the mortgage-backed security crisis is over. We fixed it. Oh, and by the way, he told Maria Bartiromo when she worked for CNBC, I do not agree with your thesis that housing can go down all across the country at the same time. Well, he did know it could. He didn't tell the truth. But it's just like Janet Yellen in 2017 saying, we will never see a banking crisis in this country again like we did in 2008. Well, guess what happened in April? Right. And I was lucky enough to call that in November on a video. I said, the banking crisis happens at the end of the first quarter, the beginning of second quarter next year. And it's not because I have a crystal ball, it's because of how people don't understand time and monetary policy and how they play very key roles with each other. And right now you're seeing that top. The velocity's gone. You're actually already seeing the dip here, but nobody's showing up to the door. So agents are having to get really aggressive with, all kinds of sales techniques. And it's exciting, because this is going to be way worse than 2008. So that means there's going to be a lot more opportunities.
Sure. Yeah. What do you see coming, though? What's going on in the market that you think is coming?
Well, I mean, there's so much happening. We didn't have to deal with BRICS. We did not have to deal with the world splitting in two, right? We didn't even have to fathom in 2008 or 2006 even countries buying gold and actually saying, we're actually going to peg our currencies to it. That's amazing. We didn't see blockchain.
Do you really think that's going to work, though, with BRICS and the gold standard?
100%. It
really?
Always does,
okay.
For a certain period of time.
Sure.
Because everything comes out great.
But it's deflationary money, so I feel like people are just going to save the good money. They're not going to want to spend it.
So are you referring to, like, if something's crypto or gold backed, they're not going to want to spend that?
Yeah, I think they're going to want to save it, especially in a world where the dollar exists and you have the bad money. They'll want to use the bad money first. They'll save the good money.
Okay, so that's really well put. But check this out. China already has a yuan denominated bond that's actually backed in gold. It's been out for a handful of years, right? So we're already seeing that move around. And if you look at pre-Bretton Woods, we had that gold backing in our currency and it moved around, right? Well, the reason why it moved around was because countries would purchase it because they had faith that it had some type of backing, that the federal government wouldn't go out of control and spend, right? Obviously, Richard Nixon and a lot of other people in the government had different plans, and so they went crazy, and that's why we had a massive inflation in the 70s, right, when they closed that gold window. I believe the opposite. I believe that it'll be fine because as long as there's audits, but it'll only be fine for a little bit, right? It only works well, and then the BRICS are going to want to do the same thing that every other country has done, like the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire. They're going to want to deflate that currency. They're going to want to, inflate it with more fiat notes. But it's to get everybody onto that.
I just feel like we're just doomed to repeat history if it's backed by gold.
100% agree.
Yeah.
But, okay, check this out. Most investors only think about, last month and next month. They don't think about multi-years. It's like trying to remind people of 2008. Now I go, velocity in real estate transaction, when it goes to nothing, then home prices drop. And then people lose their jobs, and then home prices drop more. It's the same thing with gold. In the beginning, it's going to look great, and then the country's going to destroy it over time. So yeah, I don't think the dollar's going away. I mean, I think that people think that are nuts, to be honest with you, because currencies fail all the time and they're still there. I mean, look at the Iraqi dinar. I mean, most people don't even know the history of the Iraqi dinar or the Kuwait dinar in relation to how destroyed it was and then brought back, and the people that made all the money were the politicians.
So would you say BRICS is the biggest risk that's going on in the economy right now? And for people that aren't aware, by the way, BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they're teaming up. And Iran and Saudi Arabia is joining. So we got all the oil.
I think now we're at
giants.
47 countries, something like that?
Well, they've applied.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think they've joined yet. But next year, 2 are joining, I believe.
Yeah, and you got France, too, which is huge. It's like an earthquake in the Eurozone.
Yeah, well, with the energy. So now... Yeah. That's why gas prices are going up so much.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia and Russia vowed to squeeze the heck out of us, and they're doing a great job, actually.
And it was kind of interesting for me. I remember Jerome Powell mentioned that you could have a world with multiple reserve currencies. So we're going to have the dollar and the BRICS currency.
Yep.
I don't know if the rest of the world's going to trust their gold-backed currency unless there is actual, like you said, audits, but I don't know. How accurate are those going to be? And
yeah, well, I got an idea. Let's take away the whole gold-backed idea of BRICS, and let's talk about how potent they are without it. The truth is that China has huge policy writing abilities around the world because they buy so much stuff or they sell so much stuff, right? They're a consumer. They're a consumer of natural goods, around the world. It's like they hold all the gold that they mine, and then they buy a bunch of gold, right? Same thing with oil. They do all kinds of things with natural resources. When you are a massive customer, you've got a big say on the global stage. So what's happening right now is China and Russia have gotten together and these other BRICS nations said, you know what? You're okay. America won't come and bomb you if you decide to buy oil from us in your currency or ours. Let's just make an agreement between us. And it's crazy because normally that's what gets us in wars. We just go fight and say, no, the law is you got to use dollars. And since this last term, we're seeing a massive shift. So regardless of the gold, I think China is on a warpath to destroy us. Now, with all that being said, they're dealing with mortgage-backed security crisis and all that kind of stuff too. And what a lot of people in America don't pay attention to is those Evergrande bonds, they're failing in America as well. As a matter of fact, they just came out and they claimed bankruptcy and they said, Evergrande's going to be paying off its own country before anyone is made whole in America. Oh. And that's going to ripple through the financial markets like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, like when there was those tranches, but then China's basically saying we're the first tranche on
exactly.
This. And
I looked at the Evergrande impact, or how many of the, corporate treasuries are being held by U.S. companies of Evergrande. And the impact from what I've seen as far as their balance sheet goes is like less than 1%.
Yep.
So it should be fine unless, of course, if China gets totally annihilated by that, then the consumers in China, I don't know if they'll come to the U.S. and spend money here. And
yeah. So you're totally right on the 1%. Here's the thing. Evergrande's not the only story in China.
Yeah.
We've already seen Country Garden and other builders going out
which is bigger than Evergrande.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So let's say it's 1%, but then tomorrow it might turn to 2. Well, then it goes from the building sector into another sector because it's all built on each other. The real estate sector, there's building, then there's people making money, making loans and things like that. And the bigger it gets, the worse that snowball effect happens. And I believe that's what you're going to see here in this next year and a half, actually, because you're going to see a lot of people that were exposed to these bonds, especially in the shadow banking sector, that are going to be like swimming without clothes. And we're going to find out when that tide pulls out.
By the way, how should I imagine Evergrande? Is it like BlackRock? Is it something that owns lots of properties, or is it something that owns lots of assets in other ways, like stocks and bonds?
Evergrande, like Toll Brothers and Lennar on cocaine. Like just a much bigger, massive infrastructures, not just, track homes. We're talking massive, commercial real estate.
So just a huge real estate player
around
the world.
Residential, like the ghost cities. Imagine that.
Oh, okay, the ghost cities.
Exactly.
That resonates.
Yeah, it's huge. But like you say, they're just one player, and they were the first one. They were the one that exposed everyone else. And that's what everyone ran to America and said, okay, who's got all the Evergrande debt? The problem is the way this stuff is securitized, and mortgage-backed securities, that fiasco of 2006, really is what you need to look back on, because what happened is they put all of these assets, bundled them up, and they salted them with assets on top with really good credit scores, right? And they go, oh, this is AA or AAA credit rating, and really the crap was floating below. Well, that's what's actually going on with Evergrande. And so you've got to see, it's hard to see how much was sold. It's like naked short selling. How many shares were actually sold, or how many bonds were sold, and people don't even really realize it because of how they were recorded.
Yeah, we won't know that data. It's not publicly available in the shadow banking sector, so I guess we won't know until we'll know.
Totally, but I guess the easiest way is to find out these banks that are failing right now in the spring. The one asset class that they all have in common that no bank wants to touch, they're CMBS. So when you see that going down, it gets really interesting because you're like, nobody wants to touch it.
So to anyone, commercial mortgage-backed securities.
Sorry, I'm going all over the past.
No, this is good. Commercial mortgage-backed securities. So is what you're referring to.
Yes, totally. And that's the thing. There's one bank, I'm blanking on the name of the bank. I'm blanking out. But anyway, the reason why it's such a big deal is because all these banks are waiting to see what those sell for on the open market. Because if they take a 50% or 70%, maybe 90% haircut, the problem is all these other banks have non-performing commercial mortgage-backed securities going on. So that means that's how they're going to have to value theirs. Now you have banks that are failing right now because some banks have a lot of bonds that they're holding to maturity that are becoming worthless. They're taking 50 cents on the dollar right now because rates keep going up, right? So they have those failing. Then they've got these mortgage-backed securities. Well, until credit rating agencies come right out and say, you're toxic because you're holding this much of a toxic security, everything's fake right now. Nobody realizes.
Nobody wants to make a sell because it can domino affect everything.
Exactly, because there's so much forbearance right now in that commercial space, and there's a lot of work. They're trying to work through these problems. It's way too big. And the Fed came out and told you last week. They said, look, not only are we not lowering rates, like stop talking about lowering rates. Next year, we're going to keep them higher for longer because we have a worldwide inflation problem. And with the BRICS, gold aside, the U.S. knows this. Just like Jerome said, I see a day where there's multiple currencies. If you want another country to hold our dollars, like Japan, because that's a train wreck right now, what is one thing you would do to convince them to hold dollars? You give them a rate of return,
you give them a higher rate, yeah.
Exactly, and that's what they've got to do. Japan already said last November, we're looking to dump dollars if our currency keeps getting crushed. It's about to hit 150 to the U.S. dollar right now.
And what's the result if the world dumps dollars? Like if half the world says, I don't want U.S. in my reserve currency?
For decades and decades, we've exported our inflation, right? We sell dollars for countries to hold them to buy goods, or they think that it's safe. It's all appearances, right? We were talking about magic earlier. It's all appearances. When they start to sell dollars and nobody else wants them, who are the only people that will take dollars? When nobody else wants them, it'll be us, right? So as dollars flood back to our country, we have a hyperinflation because there's more dollars chasing fewer goods. Here's another thing that you might not think about. I live in California where we produce enough avocados to feed the entire country. But when you go to the grocery store and you see the avocados, do you notice what country they're from?
Mexico.
That's right. Yeah. And that's because it's a hidden tax on our people. Because they figured out, the government goes, hey, this would be great. Let's force everyone to buy ones from Mexico and we'll put a tariff on them. And so it causes the cost of the avocado to go up. And then our avocados go to another country.
What do you think of the credit ratings agencies like Fitch downgrading the economy?
Love it. Oh, it's awesome. So, I told you, like, I sold my houses in 2006. 2005 and a half is when I was freaking out. None of those agencies were there. They weren't there ahead of time. And what's really cool is they finally figured out, you know what? I don't think people think we know much if we're late to the game. Like, it's like, what is it? Economists to me are worse than weather people, because weather people are like, hey, we think that there's going to be rain tomorrow. They got to put their necks on the line. Economists are like, they only tell you what happened last week. And so them coming out, it's a bold move because the president rails against them. It's a big deal politically. And I remember in 2008, it was big when they finally came out and said, oh yeah, these banks, they're in bad shape. You're like, where the heck were you guys? And so this is incredible because they are telling you the truth. As a matter of fact, Jerome Powell and what he's saying, he said you are going to experience pain in 2022, in early 2022. And I tried telling people on my channel, like, that's a real thing. Like, this is going to be a squeeze. You're going to experience inflation. But what's crazy, you have to ask yourself, in December of 2021, when Powell addressed the nation and said, we have seen inflation now went past 2%. We are going to get on top of it. We're going to start raising rates 4 months from now. You got to ask yourself, why in the heck wouldn't you have raised rates in December? That's insane. And it's because they knew they wanted this out of control. Because if it doesn't get out of control, they can't issue that new digital currency. And that's the exciting thing. When this goes down, there has to be a crisis to issue that currency. And what's the easiest way to issue? The first one's free. So it was really cool. They already built the narrative during the shutdowns. We just can't get you all the checks. We're trying to give you money and we can't get it to you. That's total crap. Every single person that fell in the range of getting money, they got it. But they built the narrative. And the next time there's going to be an emergency declaration and they say, get on your phones, you're going to type in your name, your social security number, there's already a wallet for you, and I think it's going to be as high as $10,000 a person. And they're going to send, dopamine just flowing through your brain and your body. And they're going to say, you've got a month to spend this money. You have to, it's your duty. The economy's collapsing. Or we take it out. And they actually have that right now. So they need a crisis. And I actually read this from some Federal Reserve meeting minutes back in 2014, because that digital currency was already built. All these are lies when they say, it doesn't exist or we're thinking about it. I was watching and talking with people that were running it, bank-to-bank transfers, back in 2014. So it's here, it's ready to rock and roll. The only argument is that none of the world wants our digital currency. They've already came up with all their own, and they actually run on very similar code bases. So technically you could say there's one big currency coming out around the world. Most people won't know it because it has different names.
When do you think it'll be out?
So it's already out. Ours is already running bank to banks, big transfers. It came out in July.
Well, other countries are doing that. That's the Fed payment system, which is different from the CBDC.
Yeah, and so it actually is the same thing. So they love to put these little different words to it so people sort of just go off in different. That is the CBDC.
What's the
Fed Now? You're talking about Fed Now.
Yeah, Fed Now is prequel to CBDC. It's not quite the same technology, I believe.
Okay. Well, they're trying to push out their own. That's why they got in that little beef with Ripple and XRP.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the world wants to run, most of the world wants to run their CBDCs sitting on top of XRP as the rails for the train, and the U.S. still wants to maintain control of SWIFT. China and Russia already invented something called SIPs, which is way faster and cheaper to run. And they started that back in, I want to say it was like 2016 when that came out, if I remember right. And so right now the U.S. is pushing back and trying to extend this, but it's just a no-brainer. I think XRP is going to be that one, but yeah, it's going to come during a crisis.
So you're saying that the inflation comes back to America as they get on this BRICS thing happens, and then we use that as a crisis moment to then switch to a CBDC.
Yep.
Crypto-based U.S. dollar.
Yeah, but I think there's another shutdown coming. Not the government shutdown, but another virus.
Well, what do you think of the government shutdown so
another
far?
Virus? Okay, and then explain that virus thing.
Yeah, I did a video. The tubes really liked it. They liked it a lot.
Which one?
Do you think
Marburg?
Do you think the first virus was manufactured?
Oh yeah. Oh, it's real virus. Made in the lab. They do it all the time.
But you think it came out of Wuhan and it was found in bats?
100%, yeah.
And it was purposely released?
Yeah, I was here in Vegas with a bunch of central bankers and big crypto people back in October of 2019. Well, what people don't realize about that date, which was really important because it was the week it came out of the lab. right? I already knew about it. We already had the list of the dates and the variants that are going to come out. We knew that this was going to get trumped up, like huge. No pun intended. But it was going to turn into something big. It's just like, and in emergency management, I see it all the time. You can get in a car accident with 2 people, and people start talking around town. Before you know it, it's 10 people. There's 3 people dead, and then people are in fear. It's just crazy, right? That blow up aided in the ability for central banks around the world to print money like you wouldn't believe. It's exactly like what happened in 1918 during the Spanish flu. And most people don't even know that. And it created something called the Depression of 1920. And then the Federal Reserve, because they were brand new, even though it was the 3rd version of the Federal Reserve in our country, they came out and they said, hey, let's help everyone because they're in a depression. Let's make interest rates really low, and let's make credit vastly available. That led to the Roaring 20s, and then subsequently crash 29 and the Great Depression. We are following that 100 years later almost perfectly. Well, what's interesting about that October date, like I said, was that the interbank lending rate had spiked to 12.5% a mere 4 weeks before. That is catastrophic. Banks were in such meltdown mode in 2019. Nobody knew about this, that they didn't trust each other. So they wouldn't loan each other money overnight. They were charging 12%. To give you an idea how bad that is, in 9/11 and in September of 2008 when Lehman Brothers crashed, the interbank lending rate went to 6 and 6.5% respectively. To say that it's at 12.5% is catastrophic.
Signal of no trust.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, something was released out of a lab. Now, we've seen releases out of CDC and stuff all the time. I was part of the anthrax movement. I saw that. I went to some of those calls. And so people don't realize when they make it really big and scary, they can hide a lot of stuff.
If you were on the other side of your debate,
yeah,
what would you say is a plot hole? Why wouldn't it go this way? Like, what's a counter argument?
You're talking about like economic
for the CBDC?
Yeah.
catastrophe?
Why wouldn't a recession not happen? We might not get a CBDC. What's something that could happen that could
Like
delay
raise
this?
interest rates
Or,
and then take care of inflation.
I love that you look at the opposite side, because that's truly a wise person. When you can ponder the opposite of how you feel passionately, that's when true wisdom comes out. There's a recession every 7 to 10 years. Clockwork. We have not had one for a long time. We're actually overdue. So the question is, why has it been this long? And the reason why it's been this long is because of artificially low rates. We've never had 0 rates in history. And actually, it was one of the Rothschilds that said in 2018, this is the greatest financial experiment of all time, because for surely we have never seen 0 interest-free times, but also negative rates. I have a friend that has a negative mortgage rate.
That is crazy.
In Denmark. Yeah, that's coming to America.
Like they'll pay you.
But you know what's even worse than that? Everyone's like, yeah, that's awesome. Doesn't matter. You're not going to qualify.
Yeah.
And because like what George Carlin says, there's a big club and you ain't in it. And that's intended to be. In 2011, when the housing market was dropping or bottoming, it was bottoming because nobody could buy a house. And the ones that could were scared to death that it could drop even further. So you can't have that fear. You got to buy in to that falling market, and then you do the cash out refis, you buy more and more, and you're buying with no money down because you're using the equity from the last house. Right. So the counter argument to me, it sounds crazy. The only way it doesn't happen is if they keep printing money, and this is the caveat, and that money does not have any velocity. And that's exactly what they did during quantitative tightening.
You mean people just start saving it more than they start spending it?
No, not people. So quantitative easing, when the Fed started printing tons of money and bailing out the banks after the last crash, the great financial crisis, you have to realize when they did that and they monetized the debt, that money didn't go anywhere. It had 0 velocity. It was locked down. It was on the Fed's balance sheet. And then as they would loosen it and get it somewhere else, it would go into pension plans and things like that. Well, before the baby boomers started retiring, that was a pretty safe bet. Put a lot of this stuff into pension funds. BlackRock's another great example. You got to look at these big entities. They're using our pension funds to make us renters. And it's pretty scary if you think about it. But at a certain point, even those big monoliths, the behemoths, fall, like Enron's, because they're seen as a Ponzi, a paper tiger. There's nothing there, derivatives, right? But you have to have a pinprick for that to happen. So going back, every 7 to 10 years, a recession, right? Every 50 to 100 years, massive crashes. We're in that 100-year time frame right now. So we're also in the fourth turning of our country's, our country's psychologically damaged. right? It's going to get more extreme. We're going to have more ebbs and flows. They're going to be sharper, tighter. And so we're at the end of an empire. Not saying America's going away. I'm just saying America is not going to be in 50 years, I believe, what it is today, right? Or what it was 50 years ago when the greatest generation was building this country. So it can keep going as long as there's not velocity. And then that goes back to what we were talking about with the BRICS and countries going, are we holding all these dollars? If they didn't come bomb us and we just went and bought a bunch of oil from Iraq or Iran, I think these are clear skies. And China and Russia is making it very clear with all these countries, we're going to be here to protect you. Did you notice they didn't come over to Ukraine? And people need to watch this. And China's already said, and we're going in to take Taiwan by force if necessary. But people don't know the history of Taiwan. Those are the ousted communists from China. In the 50s, 60s, they were ousted and they went and started, building up Taiwan. And China remembers that. China's got an amazing memory, and they play the long game, the chess game. So I hope that answers your question. I can't see it unless they can put money into the economy, bail out these CMBSs, fix all this, but then that money can't go anywhere. But it's like you're giving lighter fluid to an arsonist.
Well, that's partially why they have to keep interest rates as high as they do, because that still provides an incentive for those countries to hold our treasuries and our dollars.
And here's the question. How high do they got to go? Because we're seeing them still slow. Like bond sales are going, not no bid, but fewer and fewer countries are showing up. So at what point, how high do they got to go to attract investment?
Make it new.
Yeah, that's what I think is scary. Because I said in January, I did a video, I said, mortgage rates will be 8% by next January. And people laughed at me. I was wrong. It's just now cresting 8%. And now I'm saying 10% mortgages by next June.
You think they'll go up to that high?
Yeah, I actually think we're going to see near 20% this time. So, and that'll be really exciting.
That's just going to break more banks.
Yes. But I think banks are going to get very interesting. I think we're going to go into ninja loans. We're going to get 0%. We just went to, a 40-year Fannie Freddie secured mortgage. You can get 40 years, get into debt even longer, which I'm totally against. I think that everyone should be out of debt and then building debt in businesses. If you're going to take on debt, why not take it in the right entities so that you're protected? And nobody wants to teach that because it doesn't sell books, because it's one extra layer in financial security is to have the proper LLCs, S Corp or C Corps, and then file under S or all that stuff, LLPs. But it's that next level of protection. And banks have always tried to resist you doing that because they don't want you having that protection. They want to come over and just take you, cause fear, and hold that over you. But it's actually getting so tight. The DSCR loans are a great example of banks flowing money to entities and not to people with social security numbers.
So you think it's realistic a regular person could set up an entity like that and take debt on it without being personally liable?
Totally. It's so easy. I mean, what's crazy to me is that they don't learn that, but they're learning sub 2 deals. You're like, well, okay, so you're actually breaking rules. I love it when you ask some of these guys like, wait a minute, isn't that like legal? Well, yeah, technically, but nobody actually looks. You're like, yeah, sure, like a bank can call the note due, but we'll just figure it out with the bank. I get all that, but you think about when you're willing to push the limit that much on that, it's so easy to form an LLC, a multi-member, and learn the real ways to hold assets in an entity so you're protected, from outside attacks. Yeah. But a lot of people don't understand that, but it really comes down to paying the right people, and you don't have to pay them a lot of money either to make sure that these things are all done right.
So like your homes and things are in their own LLCs, and your gold and silver allocations
and I think everyone should have a
LLCs?
Trust. Yeah, because trusts are treated totally different. And then if you run a trust, now I'm not a financial advisor, can't say anything, I'm just an investor. But when you have multiple LLCs, the trust should be able to be the beneficiary of these LLCs, but you have all these multi-levels of protection and tax advantages too.
So what should the average person do considering what you think is coming?
Yeah, I think first off is to look at your own debt load. And if you're taking on debt right now and you've got that gut feeling something's wrong, stop taking on extra debt. Is it vanity debt? Are you buying a house because you want to impress people? What about the Ferrari story? It's like, that's not a good idea, right? The credit card debt is out of control in our country, and defaults are exploding just in the last 8 weeks. I mean, they've been rising, In the last 8 weeks, we're really starting to see
But a big curve.
Yeah. And so, to do that first, then start figuring out how to bring in a secondary form of income. And this cash flow, what is it when they say it's not, what's the term of cash flow? It's like, you don't have to look at it. Just set it and forget it. It's
Like passive income?
passive income. There ain't nothing passive about income. You've got to constantly be working, monitoring your income levels, right? Making sure that the money that's coming in, I'm referring to like real estate and stuff. You have to
Dividend,
nurture it. You have to
insurance.
build it. There's work, right?
Yes.
It's not an easy thing. But when you work hard, like you guys have worked hard to get where you are, right? But it didn't come easy. It's hard work. Start finding more streams of income and start paying off your debt. And then keep that credit score, because that's the one thing you can't do without. If you want to take advantage of this next crash, you're going to need debt to do it. You can't buy a house. The only reason a house is as expensive as it is because of debt. If we didn't have mortgages, all homes in our country would be like $5,000. That's just the truth. It's
That's interesting, but just the long cycle of debt.
Yeah, and because and look at the bottoms. Every crash, when the Fed ran rates to the bottom, and then it ran parallel for a little bit and then took off again, every single time is coming down and down. And we just hit zero rates in this last decade. We're about to go negative. But it doesn't matter because it's going to wipe so many people out. It's insane. And I think this last cycle is the one that really puts 70-80% of Americans in rentals forever.
Wow.
Because once they have that, they got it. They got you.
So when should they get into debt? After the recession, or?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think the greatest time to build business is during a recession, and the greatest time to buy assets is during a recession, right? Because you're taking advantage of the fact that people are panicked. They didn't think ahead. They need to sell their new car, or they got to sell that artwork they bought because they got to go pay off debt or just rent a place. So it's a great time, but you do it slowly. And if you start taking on debt, you don't take on debt unless you have everything de-risked, like with a rental. You own rentals? Okay, so one of the things that we always do when we're identifying a property is how much is it, how much is the rent, and then how can I get screwed in this deal, right? How can the renter screw me? How can certain costs with that, like association costs, all the different expenses, how can those go up? Are there any blind spots I'm not seeing? And what you're doing is you're de-risking, and that's really important. A lot of people run right into certain investments. They're not afraid, right? Because they read it in a book or they watched some video on YouTube, and they don't really take the time to de-risk. So one of the easiest ways to de-risk is having an emergency fund.
So here's a contingency event. What if we get stagflation? We have a recession. We have high interest rates. Yep. Do you still encourage people to take on debt in stagflation, where we have super high interest rates? Probably not a good idea. Yeah. Incomes are down. Jobs are going away. How can people build that?
So stagflation, the definition is, high, like strong employment, high inflation, right? Do you believe the job numbers right now? How do you feel about the job numbers? It's really
hard to say.
Why is it hard to say?
The government has an incentive to report them a certain way. I don't know how accurate they are.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the government's been changing the metrics, and a great website is John Williams Shadow Stats. Have you ever seen it? It's great, right? Yeah. Yep. Because he shows you how the government has changed the game, right?
Yeah.
The White House
Especially
just said
the inflation measurements are insane on that website.
And it's getting so bad, they're like, hey, let's change the definition of recession.
Yeah.
Why do you need to change the definition? Because the second recession's announced, everybody, psychologically, it just happens. They pull back. They recess. They spend less. Oh, the government says it's bad times, so I should care now. So employment numbers, they started changing the way they're saying it. Like, oh, no, it used to be employment was a 40-hour work week. Now it's like, oh, that's not full-time. Like 30 hours is full-time. And you're seeing more and more people working more jobs, like 2-3 jobs, just to get enough money to survive. They're, jostling schedules. They're stressed out. Our country is at the end emotionally. They're tapped. So you look at those job numbers like, wait a minute, are we in stagflation? Because the job numbers aren't strong. So what do we have that we know? We all know there's inflation, and we all know that credit is the bubbles popping because we're seeing like the credit card debt and all the mortgages. That's the other thing that we've never seen in our history. You don't got to pay your mortgage, and we're gonna tell the banks they can't even foreclose on you until X date. Well, they just opened that up, the floodgates, and that started in the spring. We've never seen that in our country's history. Hey, you are not allowed, banks, and we'll keep giving you money to keep you guys solvent. You're not allowed to foreclose on these people yet. We're going to wait till it gets big enough. So last spring they said, okay, go foreclose. Well, after 2008, with Dodd-Frank and all these different changes, it now takes a long time to get somebody out. So we know that foreclosure listings are going to explode mid next year. It's going to take a little over
all
a
that
year.
pressure building up.
Oh, it's going to be amazing.
Do you think the banks want that, or the reason that they're extending the payments and tacking them on to the end is because they don't want to inherit a bunch of these assets and a bunch of this real estate at depressed prices, because it's just going to cost them that much more money and that much more of a headache? So
I love the way you're asking these questions, because you're coming at it very logically. Here's the problem. These markets aren't logical. And the only people that understand this are the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world. The auto industry has gone through multiple bailouts in the last 40 years. Massive. Why? Because they hold the American people's jobs a gun to the head of the government. They say, you're going to lose all these jobs. As a matter of fact, was the Treasury Secretary in 2008 said, you're going to address Congress. He says, was it Hank Paulson? You are going to see riots and blood in the streets tomorrow if you do not vote to bail out our banks at 700, was it million or something like that, dollars, which we all know was a lot more. The banks want this because this is why. People understand this. Federal Reserve is a private bank. It is not federal. It has no reserves. They want consolidation. In 2006 to 2008, banks consolidated like you wouldn't believe. There are failures everywhere. But what you didn't realize, there's a chart out there that shows the amount of bank failures every year. Every year, banks fail, except for 2 years prior to the Great Recession. It was actually, 2004, 2006. We had 0 bank failures. We just went through 2 years of 0 bank failures, 2021, 2022. The banks are failing now again. And the big banks love it because they are buying the small banks hand over fist. And remember, money is created the second a loan's taken out. Yeah, they love that. Then you go through a contraction. You have to remember, these CEOs, these C-suite execs, they still get paid whether their bank closes or not. They don't care. As a matter of fact, one of those banks that crashed in the spring, their C-suite execs were from Lehman Brothers. I mean, you want to talk about crazy.
No skin in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the head chief economist for the National Association of Realtors? Google his name and Google the year 2007, because they were calling for his job back then. They say, this guy is high as a kite, and he's the ultimate cheerleader saying that real estate's not going to crash, and it's crashing right now. He never lost his job. You've got to look at these guys in high levels of position. They love it because they get so darn rich. I mean, we've seen CEOs from companies like Wells Fargo, getting in trouble because it was exposed that they took the big beach house from Malibu. They went, let me see the foreclosure. I'm buying that. So that's the scary thing that people need to realize. That is the conspiracy. Multiple people coming together, 2 or more, to do an illegal act. And it happens all the time. The sad thing is people throw the word theory behind it to disprove something. But to be honest with you, I don't know of a whole lot of conspiracies that haven't came true just in the last couple of years.
How are you investing in this environment?
Precious metals, cash, because deflationary spikes.
Sorry, when you say precious metals, you mean silver, gold?
Silver and gold, love that.
How are you allocating it as a percentage of your portfolio?
Ooh, I don't want to tell people because I'm crazy. I sold my entire retirement and I bought silver back in 2014. So I didn't make a ton of money, right? But then I took some more money. I bought crypto. We have that story, I have cryptocurrencies. I'm holding strategically, especially my XRP holdings, for what's happening with the government. I would have loved to have sold it high and then rebought it all back, but I'm just continually buying more on dips.
Are you surprised your silver allocations haven't gone up since your purchase?
No, and
that's probably about
part.
$18, $17 or something.
This is an interesting thing. I bet you guys don't know this. Do you know what the book The Wizard of Oz is about?
Man,
there's a lot of theories behind it.
It's not a theory. It's the book. It's about the crime of 1873.
That's right. Yeah.
Demonetization of silver.
Oh,
that's right.
tell.
That's
yeah.
right. That's right.
And when was it Goldenmeyer went to make the movie, they said the one thing that we can't have is Dorothy's slippers cannot be silver because they'll figure it out.
Because originally they were different. They were a different color.
They were silver.
They were silver. Yeah.
Because that's the whole
that's
story
so interesting.
of Dorothy going down the path, the yellow brick road to the Emerald City. And then they saw the horse. Now, Emerald City, it's the color of money, right?
Yeah.
And they see the horse of a different color because if you look at currencies throughout history, whenever they go crazy, and this is a crazy psychological truth. Hey, change the color. And people think it's different. It's like in sales 101. It's so easy to turn somebody's, because most people don't understand money. That's why most people don't have it. And then they go back and they see the little dude pulling the strings like, really, this is all we got, and that's it, and finally they discover that, and the whole system comes, coming down. Well, silver is, I believe, the most valuable asset on Earth. It is the most underrated because there's more patents tied to silver than any other metal on Earth.
The utility of it is so high.
Yes, it's amazing for medical uses, for water filtration. It is the guideline for all other currencies. When they measure how much currency can go through a metal, silver is the standard. It is you can push more amps through silver before it fails than any other metal. It's amazing. There's only so much of it on Earth. And every time we go through interesting monetary times, the amount of available silver gets shrunk so bad, and you could tell because of the amount over spot and the delivery delays. There's something interesting. We have the Hunt brothers story, but Warren Buffett, it doesn't go really reported. But in 1998, I believe it was, he invested in silver, and he got pulled in and was hushed real quick. And he came out, and then he started talking about something called the SLV. And it's, hey, this is amazing.
Version?
And
You're talking about the ETF version? The ETF version.
Because they could say, oh, yeah, we stored it over there. It's a ratio.
Right.
And this is what's crazy. People just don't get it because they don't want to publicize it. They'd say, okay, we have this much silver. And if you want to redeem your silver, go for it. Well, they started to change the rules. Well, now you need 1,000 contracts to redeem physical. Well, now you need 10,000. Now it's 100,000. You're like, well, wait a minute, you just knocked 99% of the investors out. That's all we got to do. And that's how JP Morgan got so big, because he's the one that started fractional reserve lending, but his dad didn't want to. He's like, Dad, why are these gold bars here? We should loan them out. He goes, no, those are our depositors. He goes, how often do people come pick them up? This is a long time ago.
Keep 5% of it, we'll be good.
And that's it. And the second his dad died, he started doing it. And that's why he became the biggest bank.
Do you think that the same thing will happen to cryptos like Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP once they get securitized or turned into ETFs? They'll be sort of manipulated, or
what's interesting? Yeah, everything's always manipulated. We know that, right? I mean, what's really cool, most people don't know level 2 and the backside of stock transactions. Crypto is awesome because I could see the float. I could see the heat map. I could know that if I wanted to go buy some Bitcoin, I knew how many sellers were out there, and I could manipulate the heck out of it. In the early days, I could actually grab orders. Most people didn't know this, but it was really cool because I could see all the buys and all the sells, and there were some of these Ether Delta. Do you remember Ether Delta?
Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome.
Vaguely, yeah.
Okay, it was a great, really just easy system to where you'd put in a buy order for, let's say, Ethereum, and it was selling for $100, and you'd see all these others that were, they were asking a lot. You could actually grab one. They didn't know this, but you could actually grab it and buy that order. You didn't have to go and order.
Just trade arbitration.
You didn't have to buy the order.
Book.
Yeah, and there were days
that's not even how order books work. Yeah,
and I actually was I would actually go to my buddies and say, I'm going to go to CoinMarketCap. I'm going to pump Ether this much because I could buy it in a way that it would run it up because of the volume.
So you're talking about trade arbitration, like price arbitration, which is interesting because Sam from FTX, supposedly that's how he made most of his fortune. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, maybe I'm not smart enough to understand this, but I was like, how is that possible? Because not as far back, but a couple of years ago, 2017, there were no platforms where you could have that amount of volume and trade arbitration to build $1 billion with. Like, you would have to trade arbitration for centuries before you got to $1 billion.
So we're about to get into something real dark here. And I'm glad you brought this up because people don't understand that that's what Coinbase is doing too. They don't got the Bitcoin. This is the easiest way to figure it out. I'm going to put money in. I'm going to buy a Bitcoin. I wire the funds. It takes, let's say, 2 to 3 hours, right? It's weird, though, because Coinbase, it's like a full 8 hours. I wire it. There was one day I wired the exact same amounts of money from the same bank. It took, like, within 10 minutes, those wires each went out. One to Coinbase, one to Gemini. Gemini, money was in my account in 2 hours. Coinbase, it was 8. I could buy Bitcoin right there. I bought them both. Gemini, I could pull it off. I pulled it off within 5 minutes of the trade. Coinbase, whoa, no, you need 72 hours. Oh, that means you're running derivatives books. Oh, it's not real. You don't got the Bitcoin. And that's really cool because we've seen that with Robinhood, these other places. Like Robinhood was really classic because they turned around and, something's falling and you're like, you can't sell. You can't sell. Well, it's because you don't have the actual shares in the system and the DTC can't close them. But people don't know what that means. Yeah, so this is what's really cool about, I don't talk about this stuff on my channel. I'll just use yours. with crypto, I could see the whole order book, and it's not manipulation. I could go, and this is what's scary. Stocks are only worth what the last one traded for, right? So let's say you have IBM, let's say it was at $1,000 or whatever it is, or $1,000. If one share sold at 1,001, it's 1,001. But usually don't see that show up because there's so many millions of shares trading every nanosecond, right? So the prices are just doing this. With crypto, I could see behind the scenes. It's called level 2. And that's what he was doing. He closed it off. He doesn't want everyone seeing that Bitcoin's about to drop because a bunch of whales popped in, and you saw big sell orders come through. They don't want that. They want to be able to take advantage of it. And this is the other thing that's scary, because there's other huge stock trading platforms like TD Ameritrade and other ones. They sell you their own shares. They've got a pool of their own stuff, and you may not be getting. Yeah, it's not going to trade. It's not going to run over to another.
It's not a transparent order book.
It is not at all, and they don't. They know you're never going to say anything because it's the difference of 15 cents, 20 cents. But I mean, we've all seen that one movie. I don't remember that funny movie where they ripped off their boss Office Space, 1 penny at a time, and they're just that program. That's what they're doing, and that's what ETFs do. That's what all these companies do that manage your funds. If there weren't 100 people grabbing your money in every part of that transaction, yeah, you're making 6%, 20%, sweet. Can you imagine if there weren't all those fees? I mean, most people don't even know the difference between, loaded, the difference between the loads on mutual funds. It's just interesting how this monetary system works and how fragile it is. So this is what's even scarier. There's a lot to tell you. Did you know that the Federal Reserve came out last September and they said, it wasn't last September, it was last spring, they said that last September, over 700 banks contacted them and said, we're insolvent. Did you guys know about that?
That's insane.
Okay, you got to go back and look at that. So it was an announcement that was made by the Federal Reserve back in the spring when all of the banks were already crashing. They go, yeah, we got told about this back in September.
Was it that they were insolvent, or that their balance sheet was worth less than the deposits, right?
That's insolvent,
because
right?
their bond rates, not quite, because they would only be insolvent if those bonds were called or something, requested, right?
Oh, let me explain it.
It's like being insolvent if you have a higher debt load than you do, a net worth. You're not quite insolvent; you just have more debt.
True, but when banks, you are not allowed to. You have a ratio, right? And so you have to run within that ratio. All the banks came to say they're well under that ratio. And you're right. One of those things and a big one was the bond portfolio.
Yeah.
Because that's why they went to the Fed. They go, hey, you're screwing us here.
Yeah,
right?
By raising rates, you're making our treasury bonds go down in value. So now we're holding all this collateral. It's worth a lot less than...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in that announcement, what they did is they said, okay, we opened up the repurchase window. So give us whatever you've got for collateral and we're going to flood you with money. But that announcement, what was very key is they said, we're not going to tell you who the banks are, and not only that, we're not going to announce it for up to 5 years after this is over. Why? Because they know that if you found out your bank was on that list, that their portfolio was at risk, and that they were going to have to stop making loans, which would mean them going under, you'd pull your money. Yeah, and we just saw, we have not seen this since the Great Depression. The M2 money supply retracting, it's going down, and it's been going down for 4 quarters. We've not seen this since the crash of 29.
Yeah. And M2's cash. Is that
M2
right?
it counts for all cashier's checks, cash, checking accounts, actual tangible cash.
Well, also remember the Fed introduced a new borrowing system.
Yep.
So,
and why would they have to do that?
Yeah. So they introduced a new way for banks to borrow money that was outside their normal window at lower rates.
This podcast is so interesting.
To backstop the banks. Yeah.
So, Andrei, you're already explaining that it's crashing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anytime they start going, we got to do something different.
I'm trying not to be like a doomsday guy.
Are you kidding me?
Don't get me wrong. The evidence is there if you're looking for it. The data's there. I don't know.
What do you think? You know, more millionaires are made during bad times than good, right?
Sure.
Okay, so I want everyone to be a millionaire, and I'm not joking. I'm about to print off some hats that are going to trigger a lot of people, but it's going to trigger them because they can't read. Because it's going to say something amazing on this hat, and it's about the wealth of the nation's been robbed, and it's being taken out of the middle class. If we lose the wealth of the middle class, we're going to lose our country.
Yeah.
And that's what's scary. So I know.
So rich people want a middle class.
What?
Don't rich people want a middle class?
No.
As much as they want money, don't they need to sustain people from being angry?
No. What happens when you get more power? What do you want?
Well, to keep the power, and if you take it from the middle class, won't they get
No.
in revolution mode?
No. I mean, you have it's like we're talking Stone Age stuff. We're like talking oligarchs. We're talking lords, right? This is the return to serfdom. Serfs, the slaves, right? The people that lived outside of the castle. No, they love their castle.
You put up a wall and just
you put up a wall
and
and
live in
like,
paradise.
Stay outside, peasants. But that's what they want. And the richer you get, the more control you have. Before you know it, you're like, I want to, weaponize, hornets and kill everybody, or mosquitoes. That's happening right now. Malaria is starting to kick up in Florida. Oh, it's weird. Bill Gates messing with that too. It's when you get more power, you just want more.
I just have to ask though, like when they get the 700 notifications that the banks, like, were either underwater or like in bad position, do you think they secretly paid them and we'll find out in 5 years, or do you think that it fixed itself?
It's there's no secret. It's called the repo window. The repurchase window. And that's when they said, we're not going to show you what banks are accessing that repurchase window. Here's another thing. Here's going to trip you out. Did you know about what the FDIC leaked video said in November? The FDIC had a meeting because everything was crashing last September. They said they leaked a video out 4 or 5 weeks ago. They said, we cannot tell the public that banks are collapsing or we're going to have a straight up panic on our hands. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear it.
Oh, you got to go watch the video. You'll love it. And this is what's really going on. Well, okay, let's look a little deeper. The FDIC is completely insolvent. We know that because they said it like 4 months ago. Like, okay, we're done. We're tapped. We need all the banks to pay more money. What did the Federal Reserve come out and say? They can't do that. So what are you going to do? We're just going to make all the big banks pay. And so what did Bank of America come out? There's Brian Moynihan screaming, you can't do that. We can't afford it. And then they said, well, and you've got to do Basel 4?
Basel 3.
Basel 3. Yeah, sorry, you're going to need to actually have more money in the bank. What? Only 3%. What? We can't compete with other banks. What does that tell you? Their margins are run too thin.
Yeah.
So what's the next thing? Everyone's going to
consolidation.
It's these strikes. Everyone's going to start striking against their employers, and you're about to find out real quick in the next year, your employers are insolvent, you're fired. And the unemployment rate's going to explode. And that is the ultimate.
That's what the Fed is trying to do.
Exactly. And he's saying it. We need higher unemployment. Yes. I want you fired. Yes. You're like, huh? And that's the thing. Most people are like, well, he doesn't talk about me. He's probably talking about that weirdo down the street with the weird hair. No, he's talking about you. And that's the thing when you're talking about wealthy people. See, what's wealth to you? Wow. I'm talking billionaire level. I'm not talking somebody worth $10, $20 million. Yeah. We can do all. I
guess it's more of a game at that point or something.
Totally. People can achieve multimillionaire status, right? If you work hard, no problem. We could all do it. To get billionaire status, you've got to start a lot of publicly traded companies. That's the only difference between billionaires and us.
Well, here's an interesting question. If you became Jerome Powell overnight, I'd put you in power, hypothetically.
Sweet. I'd have better hair.
What do you do? How do you fix this?
That's the hard thing. We just went through a leader that told a lot of truths, and it hurt a lot of feelings. Exposing what's going on in the banking system would collapse everything.
The reason I asked that is because
so CBD is what you did.
We're on the other side of this. We're on the receiving end of this information that, like we said, we probably agree is probably not accurate.
Yeah.
But there is a reason why it isn't told as truth to the public, because if it was true, everyone would panic.
You're right. And he's actually doing a lot of truth. You're going to be in pain.
Right.
I love Jerome Powell. Yeah. He did this. Oh gosh, you probably remember this. 2 or 3 quarters ago, everyone's like, we're gonna lower rates. We're gonna lower rates. And he had just finished a press conference at 1 p.m. Eastern. The guy goes, we need another press conference at 2. He gets back on and goes, I want to make sure everyone understands this because all the tickers on CNBC. We're not going to stop raising rates. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was right after. He's on it. So then he just came out again. He goes, oh, yeah, you guys think we're going to lower rates next year? No, not only that, we're going to make it harder. So he is doing an excellent job of exposing their plan.
Well, part of me thinks I don't know if it's so much exposing the plan as much as it is just managing people's expectations, because so much of inflation has to do with what you think will happen. And if he constantly says, hey, I'm going to keep raising rates, I'm going to keep, it's going to stay high, it manages our expectations, which in a way cools inflation down. So he is playing a game of psychology too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying if you were Jerome Powell right now, what would you do? I'd screw it up.
I'm being honest. You are totally true because you've got to manage expectations and you've got to keep people calm.
Right. Because if you were to tell the truth, you just destroy the nation.
Yeah, and let's do this. Let's bring it full around circle. Basel 3. What was the most The craziest thing about gold in Basel III, do you guys know what changed? Gold became a tier 1 asset on banks' balance sheets. It has not been for a long time. So that's all of a sudden a game changer. And I had personally board members from banks calling me and saying, we're going to buy gold and put it on our balance sheet because we don't believe in these treasuries. Now think about this. Wow. If banks would have done that a couple years ago, they'd have been buying gold at $1,600 an ounce, and it's worth what? Maybe $1,900, $1,850, instead of holding tier 1 assets that were treasuries. And those are going down in value. You know, I mean, talk about a psychological difference. The banks are, and Bank of America's spaz out was probably the best tell right there. Like he said it, if you force us to hold an additional 3% in reserves for an emergency, we can't compete with other banks. They just told you they're screwed.
Andrei, do you have an answer for your own question? Like, is it impossible, do you think, if you're Jerome Powell to play the right psychological game?
I don't think he can win. I don't think he can win.
There's no way out.
No, there's no winning that job. It's the hardest job in the world.
Janet Yellen was awesome at it. You want some cookies?
Well, I don't
because
know.
It's an impossible job, so you just try to like please people on the way down, I guess.
Yeah.
You can't actually convince everyone.
I mean, you're in charge of a Ponzi scheme. I mean, how do you win?
Okay.
Well, this whole thing's fake.
So you got crypto, you got gold and silver. Do you own any stocks?
Yeah, but they are weighted heavily on commodity space.
Okay.
Because I believe we're going into a commodities bull run. Now, with that being said, they've underperformed. And I made an announcement on my channel, and I do it really lightly because I'm not a financial advisor. Said, hey, just, I'm going to sell off a pretty big chunk this last spring. I'm going to wait for all of my stocks to come back because I am credit investor. When I buy stocks, I buy them before they either go public or I buy them in tranches when the companies need investors, and I'm part of that pool of investors.
So more like small
Berkshire
caps.
Hathaway.
You're saying small caps before they go public?
Like 50 million, $100 million market caps.
Right.
Something like that. Yeah, bigger companies don't need that, right?
Yeah.
So I invest that way.
So Russell 2000 focused, which Russell 2000 in his small caps has just like been destroyed.
Yeah.
For a while, yeah, and it's probably going to continue to be destroyed because those companies, they're smaller. They need to borrow money. They need lower rates.
Corporate bonds.
And what's the Russell
exploding.
2000? Does that mean it's a commodities index?
No, Russell 2000 refers to an index compiling a bunch of small cap companies.
Oh,
yeah,
small cap.
It's a great Main Street USA style, composite. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. So you got small caps, real estate.
Yep. No real estate. I've just got my personal house. I'm ready to rock and roll.
So you sold all your rentals.
Dude, I haven't been in real estate for quite some time. So I've owned brokerages,
right,
real estate brokerages. I was a real estate agent, but that didn't work really well because I was diving more into the real estate owned, the foreclosure side in 2016 to 2018 because they were actually exploding. Actually, most people don't know this either, that Zillow used to show pre-foreclosures. But by 2017, 2018, there were so many of them. It was really not looking good for real estate. So they actually wiped that away. They don't show that anymore. Do you remember that?
2018, they showed
pre-foreclosures. It was a different color. The house was a different, I want to say it was blue.
Interesting. No,
yeah, so they were popping up all over. And so, pre-foreclosure is pretty much defined as within 30 days, your first 30 days to 90 days, you're in pre-foreclosure if you're behind.
It's like the same psychological problem we were talking about. You just don't want to show everybody how bad it is because then it gets worse.
Yeah. And most people don't know, too, that Zillow and Redfin, they aggregate data. They don't have the full. There's 600 MLSs around the country. Realtor.com is the best. They're owned by the same people that own the Wall Street Journal. They're the best to go and find information, but even Realtor.com does not have all the listings in the country. And that's another thing, going back to crappy data, we don't have the census data for 2023 yet with these ultra high rates. The consumer was psychologically damaged when we went from 5.5% mortgages to 7%, right? And that happened in less than 90 days. The census data is going to show it, and there's a lot of off-book spec homes that are sold on Facebook before they even hit the market with an agent. So that's not even captured through not Realtor.com, but the National Association of Realtors. So there's a lot of shadow inventory that's out there that's moving. I know people that buy up swaths of home, 500 at a pop, in one fell swoop, and it goes into a fund's portfolio. But here's the thing, again, break that system. If Jerome Powell says he's going to get unemployment up, those people are going to stop paying rents. And even the big funds are going to be they're not going to be immune to this crash.
Yeah, that's interesting when the inventory is sort of missing. I think a lot about how with Bitcoin versus Ethereum, Bitcoin has so much that's probably lost, but we don't really have a great metric for who's just not moving it or who lost the key. Because it was before anybody cared. Whereas by the time Ethereum came out, people actually held it and knew its value. So I always wonder, like, actually how much Bitcoin could even move if everybody wanted to move it at the same time.
I can tell you that I know of XRP that hasn't moved for a long time, that there's people running that. You know what I mean? So it's...
Okay. Let me run through a couple scenarios if I was just an average person trying to figure out, like, car, house, stocks, whether you want to, buy it or short it or just...
Gotcha.
Okay, so if I was looking for a car right now, would you recommend people buy one?
You are crazy if you buy a car right now. Yeah, but you know what? The UAW strikes are causing people like, they're not going to be able to make cars. Like, no, strikes end. Nothing's forever. And the one thing that right after the strike's done, ramp up production. We got to sell or we're screwed, right? Like I told you before, I just bought a car really undervalued because somebody broke and they're like, I'm going to lose my business if I don't sell a car. But I'll tell you what, I just listed my Kia Optima for like $8,000. There's nobody calling. Why is that? Because nobody's getting loans. So, I mean, that's the thing. All these companies are going out. Bank of Montreal just walked. So you have a liquidity crisis before our eyes. That's something so much worse. None of this happened in 2008. So the cars, don't buy.
Okay, unless you get a deal.
It's smoking deal, yeah.
Yeah, real estate. But what if someone wants to buy a house? Not a rental property, just a house.
If you can buy a house and with a minimum down payment and you are paying the same or just a little bit above rent in your area, and then you factor in the write-offs, there's never a bad time to buy a house. There's not bad, cycle, there's bad deals. And so buy well and you'll be fine. So that's what I'd say about real estate.
But you're saying the overall market is good or bad?
Screwed.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about investing? Where would you go? You have $10,000. Like, where should I put this money?
First off, well diversified. I don't think people understand how dangerous ETFs are. They're vaporware. They have an exposure to a market. It's like going and buying Bitcoin from Coinbase. Hey, look, we have an exposure to
and
this.
stuff.
What?
Like even the spider and like the
all ETFs are different. They're not all like that, and a lot of them have real stuff in them, right? But you actually can read these prospectus and stuff and see this gives you exposure to this, and this. You're like, well, how much of it is this stock? And they won't tell you. And I think a lot of people are going to find that to be true here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Because think about this: a bank, all they're doing is they go, "It's a casino. Do you want IBM stock? Yeah, it's like, cool. Here it's $100." And they're betting just like a casino that all they got to do is something a little triple wire, a little news story, and all of a sudden it dips down. And you're gonna want $99 back, and they just give you $99, and they get to keep the buck.
Yeah.
It's a very serious game. This is a casino, and most people invest like casinos. They're not value investors. Like Warren Buffett. This is excellent. Everyone tore me up. I said, you need to stop paying attention to what Warren Buffett does because you only get to see what he did. You don't know what he's doing right now. And everyone's like, Warren Buffett's buying this and buying that. And then what happened? Second quarter, we're seeing Buffett's move into a massive cash position. He's buying transport stocks. Well, that means the economy's good. No, that means the transport stocks are down. See, the dry Baltic index is down. Freighter in rentals are down. Things aren't good. They can't even get a full ship through the Panama Canal because of a drought. People don't see this. They just don't get it. And so get ready for Q3 numbers. They come out in about 2 weeks. And it's going to be tragic because you're going to see Warren Buffett's cash position get bigger because most people, they only get what happened in the past. I'm trying to show them through time cycles what happens in the future.
It is interesting. Warren's one of the last people that really does just sit there and think like a value investor without a laptop or without anything else, and his decisions do
that's my
different.
Biggest worry is Warren Buffett's cash position. Like I might look at all these indicators and recessionary indicators and all this economic data and try to make sense of it. At the end of the day, I can't predict the future. But one thing, when I'm looking at Warren Buffett, and he's the guy that's like dollar cost average, just every single month or whatever, just keep buying it.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, how do you have over $100 billion cash position right now?
Yeah, it's
like,
not
what are
making
you
interest.
waiting for?
We also have to remember he raised a lot of that money. People don't think, like that wasn't all his money. He raised money, right? He sold stock in his company and they raised money, Berkshire Hathaway, right? So they use money, they leverage money to get big positions. But when you get that big, I shouldn't say this on camera, I used to be able to get into Binance and there's a little symbol used to pop up, a little whale. And it blew me away the first time. It's like, what is that thing? And they're like, oh, that's a whale alert. And I'm like, I'm the whale? And then I figured something out. I said, well, wait a minute. If I just put that much Bitcoin, it's not that much. We're talking like, at a certain point, it was like 4 or 5 Bitcoin would sling to that. I go, there's a lot of weak hands right here. I can just buy it all up. And then instantly the order book looks different because now it's a bunch of people that want a lot more for that Bitcoin. And all of a sudden that price spikes. And I'm like, well, I'll sell a little bit more. That was arbitrage. That's what Warren Buffett does. He can come in so big and negotiate. I mean, think about it. In 2008, Hank Paulson called him like, I need your help. And he's like, yeah, okay.
He's like, happy to help, man.
American needs your help. He's like, no problem. I'm gonna rape this thing. It's pennies on the dollar. Because he's an investor, a value investor.
Yeah.
He's all, if I'm going to come in and you're going to see my money, I'm negotiating a much cheaper price. He's very shrewd. That's a good thing.
Starting to get some of that Nassim Taleb kind of just like, I'm just to sit on this cash, wait for the bad thing, and then pick it all up.
If I could play the devil's advocate against myself with Warren Buffett, because I am scared of Warren Buffett's cash position, it's that, number one, he's not finding the greatest deals. When you look at the treasury market and you're seeing whatever 5% return on your money, maybe he's looking at that and going like, you know what, I'd rather just put this $100 billion in the 5% and just get my guaranteed return and just not risk this nest egg and just see how this plays out.
So here's the big question. What type of treasury is he buying? Is he buying a 30-day? That's the most important thing. If he's
I'm sure
in 30
it's
days,
staggered over, it's like,
let's find out.
diversified.
Because if he's in 30 days, then you know that the end is nigh. That's it. Because he's like, I only got to hold this for 30 days.
Is that true though? Because if I'm in treasuries, I'd be in 30 days. Like I want my money, I want access to 30 days because 30 days is pretty much the same as 2 years. And
not when you need your money.
Right, but
and not when the rates go higher.
Well, you always want access to your money, right? That's why it's at 30 days. So it's like
but here's the thing with 30 days. It's really interesting. Let's say you went out and you bought a 2-year, and Jerome raises rates again. And this is the other thing people don't get. 10 years not actually going up because the Fed's raising rates. They're behind the curve.
Yeah.
The rates are going up because the government is out there pushing a ton of debt on the markets because they know something's coming. And there's not enough buyers, so they've got to offer higher rates. Corporations have to offer higher rates. So that's why that 10-year rises ahead of the Fed. A lot of people are like, oh, they're in anticipation. Like, well, what's the bond volume that day? If all of a sudden it's dropped and you see the rate goes up, that means there's some people that need to borrow money right now. So we're offering you a higher rate.
Yeah.
So if Warren's in 30 days, it's because he knows that rates are going to go higher. Because if you hold a 2-year and rates go higher, you're screwed because your bond is, why would anyone want to buy your face value bond? They're going to go, the heck with that. What's key, and this is what I'm excited about, this thing's going to go up high. It's going to get really awesome. I want to buy bonds at the top. Because can you imagine what the value of that's going to be as the Fed starts dropping rates and the bond market comes down to what it's been like in the last couple of years? The values of the bonds are going to be so much because they're paying such a high interest rate.
Yeah, well, that's another reason why rates are going up is because the Fed is unloading their balance sheet with bonds, right? So rates are going up there too. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm fully on board with, Warren Buffett knows that it's going to collapse because he's holding 2 months. I just feel like he wants access to his money right away.
I just think he just knows if it goes, rates go up, he's going to lose money, just like the banks.
Well, if he's trying to exit beforehand, right? But if he sees them to maturity, there's no reason why bonds.
Yeah, you're right. He's got a ton of money. He could sit back and different tranches are like, all right,
just wait it out
over there.
Yeah,
I'm going to go eat my KFC.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so what else would you buy right now? Anything else that you think is a good play?
No, honestly, no. So we were in an art gallery earlier. We were getting this stick. We were gonna go look at this picture, and it was $12,000. Oh, you better buy it because it's going up. I'm like, yeah, it's weird. It's always going up. But I've been in the same art gallery for 2 years, and it still hasn't gone up. But every day I go in there, it's going up. And I already know somebody that lives actually near you that's selling one for half price. So I'm already trying to figure out how I'm gonna get the best price on this thing. The only reason I can comprehend that is because there's nobody in the art gallery with cash. And so it's hard because other than cryptocurrencies and precious metals as a hedge against inflation, and that's the other thing, crypto, because of derivatives, are very vulnerable when a stock market crash happens to downturns because of derivatives.
Oh, can you explain that? Because I've always wondered. I always thought they'd be kind of strong against it. But
take a S&P and a Dow chart and then overlay it to Bitcoin. And you'll be like, oh, what? And so what happens is, as the stock market turns, a couple days later, crypto turns. And then in some instances, crypto actually leads. It's a leading indicator as it dips down that there's problems in equity markets. The other thing, too, that people don't realize is when we start to see the sell-off of paper, gold, and silver contracts, that's usually indicating a liquidity crisis. And we saw gold and silver trail down the whole year of 2008 up to Lehman Brothers. And then what happened is 6 or 7 weeks after Lehman crashed in the end of September, we saw it bottom. The stocks didn't bottom till mid-2009. Gold and silver went on a multi-year, I don't want to say it was like a 5-year terror. Gold ended up 600 to 1900. Silver went from $9 to $48. Now, if you would have taken that same amount of time, it was multi-year, and you realize that real estate, like in big areas like me in California, we saw a 46% drop in values, but my silver went up 4x. That's a lot of leverage. A lot of leverage.
I saw an interesting correlation between Bitcoin and the Dixie index, the dollar.
Yeah.
So if you overlay the two, Bitcoin tends to do better when the dollar is weaker. And right now, since the dollar is stronger, Bitcoin is not doing as. There's a lot of reasons why Bitcoin's not doing quite as good.
Yeah.
But there is a strong correlation.
And that's easy as slosh or flow. When people like myself go, oh, you know what? I think because interest rates are going up, the dollar's going to get stronger. I'm going to pull my crypto back and go into dollars, not in treasuries when I get crazy. It's perfect. The Dixie is the best. The dollar is the best smelling turd in the punch bowl. They're all turds. But the dollar is weighted in that Dixie heavily to the euro and some other handful of other currencies. Bitcoin is the strongest in the batch of all the cryptos, right? So that's a great correlation because in both asset classes, they are known as the dominant players.
Right. What's your next move, I guess? What are you planning for the future,
Yeah, 2024 is going to be the channel?
Or just what you're doing, yeah.
You're ready to buy real estate, right?
Yeah.
Like you're waiting for that
Yeah,
signal
but there's a signal, and it has to do with when the Fed capitulates and starts dropping rates. And it always is leading right before recession. Now, this is what's scary. This is going to be the only time in the century it hasn't happened. If you go to a Fed funds rate chart out of the St. Louis Fed, or Fred, you'll see that as the plateau happens and then they start immediately dropping rates, it always happens 1 quarter before the official announcement of the recession. Now, we know the official announcement of the recession is going to be the mid of January because Q3 is already dropping in GDP, and we're going to see Q4. And they've already changed the definition once. Biden can't pull it off again. Here's the problem. In all of those scenarios before, we never had out of control inflation and BRICS. So I think they're going to have to continue because we're actually seeing stagflation. They're going to have to keep raising rates. So that's going to cause panic in all kinds of markets. And I think that's going to be a panic into gold, to be honest with you. And I think the Costco thing that just happened at Costco, you saw them selling gold bars?
I did, yeah.
Okay, that's game changing. Now, I talked to my broker and she could still beat the price, but here's the point. People trust Costco. It's a phenomenon, right? There's like, it's got, I don't even know why they don't have Kirkland on the bars, but it's a big deal. And then what's even bigger, because Walmart's been selling gold bars for quite some time, a couple of years. They sold out fast. That hit all the news. So now people that have never owned a gold bar just went, well, if Costco's selling it, I should buy it. You have a flood of people running into an asset class, and that's what everyone's been talking about, these ETFs of Bitcoin and XRP. It's going to cause so much buying. Well, I think that's about to happen in gold. Now, I'm not saying go out and buy it tomorrow. You got to buy right and be patient and get the right prices, go do your technical analysis and all that stuff. But I think that 2024 is going to be so chaotic and so scary, especially for us on social media, because look at what they just did. They just said, hey, you can keep threatening all these social media companies, the White House. There's wars going on with the Supreme Court and was 11th District courts right now, because of what the government's doing to try and censor all kinds of truths, including financial. So 2024 is going to be a very wild year. And so I am more about harnessing all my purchasing power, but also getting ready to position myself. So one of those things I'm doing, I'm getting around amazing human beings. People that are level-headed, they're thinking clearly, they're not overly emotional, and they're ready to go and do something about this. If we lose the wealth of the nation, if the middle class loses it, we're done. So that's what my 2024 is to motivate people that could never comprehend buying a house, because right now they're like, it's too expensive. Don't worry. I heard all that same things in 2005. We're going to be patient, and we're going to strike at the right time. And I want to show people how to get rich. That's my passion. And it's your guys' too. I know you guys are really into this stuff. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I'm not quite doing it like you are, though.
I understand. Well, and we're totally different spots in our lives,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think I can. The best that I can do in my videos is just entertain, provide some information, and make sense of the complexity of the economy and finance. But at the end of the day, I'm in my videos, and my opinion is no one can use this stuff to predict the future. We have no idea where it's going. You know, the only thing I can do is show you what I'm doing with my money, and I'm transparent about how I invest. But I can't. There's no call to action for people to be like, do this right now.
Yeah, we get in trouble saying it. You know? I mean, I ride a tricycle on my, you probably don't know, but I ride a tricycle on my channel, and I use cardboard as my notes, pizza boxes. So I'm not really fancy, and I entertain too. But the predictions, enough of them have come true now over the last 3 years. It's starting to pick up. So just keep up the good work, because you guys are killing it. And I really want to thank you for having me on.
Yeah, likewise. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Sweet. Sorry, guys, for going long.
No, that was